وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our presentation on the correct architectural heuristics of the universe, an insight into our true world in light of physics. With us we have Mr. Luqman, a student of physics from Humberside, who also has a background in clinical sciences, STEM research, astronomy and astrophysics. I'll now pass it over to him and let him go through the presentation and points that he wishes to deliver.
Hi Habib, thanks for having me. I'm quite thrilled to be on your society's platform. I'd like to just take the opportunity for making the case for an alternate architectural heuristics of the world we live in. And because of my background in clinical sciences and physics, I've studied physics at postgraduate level, and I do believe that my research in this particular branch has been aided by my courses, the courses I took in astronomy and astrophysics. So I'd just like to thank your society for having me on. And my previous debate or conversation was with Dr. Baloch, and I'd like to I appreciate him very much for all the work he's doing, and I'd like to thank him for the opportunity of having had the discussion on this topic. Now, before I carry on, I'd like to just give a brief disclaimer that this topic is quite refined, it's quite narrow, it's very specific, and it's not relevant for everyone and anyone. This topic pertains to higher intellectual tastes, and for people who've covered their basic needs in life and they have a bit of free time and money and energy to venture into the unknown and have aesthetical research-oriented analysis of the world they live in and the world around them. So I thank you very much for having me on here. I'm not going to provide a typical documentary on why we live in on a disk encased in domes and why things aren't as they appear to be, but rather my job or duty is to look at the uncovered and untouched aspects of this theory. For now, I'm going to call it a theory because there's intense amount of opposition to it, and because of that that negative impact, there's no mainstream scientific support for it. And even so after 2018, YouTube's new chief executive has taken it upon herself to censor and carry out a unanimous censorship of all such material. Mind you, the other conspiracy theories have not been dampened or deafened, and they're still available on YouTube from page 1, but you won't find any pro flat earth videos until you reach page 10 or 11 of YouTube. So I have there's a particular summarized presentation we've come up with for to make it as audience friendly as possible. This presentation, which hopefully is available on the screen, it talks about the correct architectural heuristics of the universe we live in. And I'd like to state that the war isn't between circularity and roundness, it's between sphericity and disc shape. So a sphere and a disc are both circular at some point. I mean, a sphere is a 3D manifestation of a circle. Circle is a 2D circle, but it's not about roundness and circularity. There is circularity in both models, but we're talking about independent sphericity, isolated globular rotating planetary body model versus the encased disk domed model. And I call it the domed model because the psyops against this movement has made this word flat earth a joke. And my work is also on the impact of this theory, the impact it's had on the Muslim mind, the toxic impact. So the next the next page would be it's we're challenging NASA's deception, and it's today's today's 5th of June 2021, and I've been given this opportunity from by your society to make my case. And the aims and objectives of this presentation is to challenge the deception imposed upon the masses by NASA throughout the last 60 years via televised media, and also to expose the silent deception organized by heliocentric Masonic societies through the efforts of Kepler, Copernicus, and Galileo Galilei, via careful yet subtle inversion of the data analysis. The data analysis I'm talking about is the Rudolphine tables that were in the custody of Tycho Brahe, who was the royal chief court astronomer in Denmark, and he was the Danish royal astronomer, and he had the accurate data that he deduced and derived from Arab astronomers, and he had that book called Rudolphine Tables that confirmed the domed, encased stellarium domed model, and all the calculations were based around that model. What Kepler did when he became his apprentice, after 1 year, since Kepler's apprenticeship with Tycho Brahe, Tycho Brahe suffered mysterious poisoning and then he passed away. And because Kepler was the next most apprentice, he inherited all the data and all the equipment of Tycho Brahe, and because of that, what he did is what we call tweaking. When you tweak the data, you end up translating the data from a 2D model into a 3D. So that's what he did. And I don't know how he did it, what he did, but the Rudolphine tables are not the same as they ought to be. And the Cambridge University then published, several versions of Rudolphine tables, which are snapshots, but not a complete Rudolph. They've admitted that Kepler worked on them, reworked the Rudolphine tables. So history of astrophysics is very, very important because it's the history and the people that impact the progress of science. I've had a very copious amounts of interaction with people in Dr. Baloch's Telegram channel, and most people, well, some of the people are very critical of this topic as to why Muslims are even discussing this topic and what impact it has on the health of Muslims' faith, personal faith, and collective faith. I mentioned something in the previous presentation that the architectural heuristics of the world we live in is directly impacts upon the vision we have of the universe, directly impacts upon our belief. The current model we worship is that, Earth is a very tiny speck, pale blue dot in a vast 42 billion light years radius universe with no connection, and there's chemical evolution going on. There's, and there's a Big Bang based planetesimal planetoid formation taking place. Light is reaching us from billions and billions of years away, and there's red shift, blue shift. Stars are heavy hot lamps. This whole movement is designed to make you apathetic, atheistic, eventually deny the existence of a higher power. Isa said in Bible, look at the fruits of a tree if you don't know what the tree is. If we look at this rotating planetary, isolated planetary globular body model, we see that it induces atheism, nihilism, narcissism, and anarchism. It makes you atheistic, hopeless. It kills your spirituality. It reduces your sense of self-worth. It kills your religiosity. It makes religion worthless. It leads to a person becoming so hopeless that he or she ends up committing some form of suicide, intellectual suicide, religious suicide, social suicide, or maybe perhaps physical suicide, which is an act of selfishness. This model is designed to make you think like a chemical monkey, a worthless chemical monkey with no claim to spiritual enlightenment or spiritual completion. Whereas the model, look, please try to understand. Let's just say you're the elite and I'm in a prison planet of Earth. If you actually told me, Habib, that you Luqman, are in a prison planet and there's a dome on top, we can't escape it, and we are encased in a. The first question I'd ask you: who put us here? Whom are we supposed to worship? Who is the creator and the king of this whole prison? We would. It makes you. It opens that switch. Whereas if you tell me completely opposite, if you tell me the NASA model, then it frees me of the yoke of religion. It frees me of it. Yet it doesn't change the structure. Beliefs are only accurate and correct if they're in line with facts. Facts don't change, but beliefs can be altered, monitored, tailored. They can be modified, modulated. They can be excised. They can be edited. But facts remain facts. So my hypothesis is that Earth's a layered flat disk encased in layered domes above and below, with stellarium and top under the throne of Almighty. Even if my model is incorrect, the NASA model is false nonetheless and does not represent the true nature of the architectural heuristics of the universe. My methods and materials were spending hours and hours seeing the experts examine the ESA and the NASA broadcasts, revision of equations involved in ascertaining the feasibility of scientific concepts under discussion, curvature of water, curvature equation, and all the other, Archimedes principle, colligative properties of water, and this and that. Then I spent time understanding the nature of deception in science, whereby the confusion is spread worldwide. I began to know how deceptive mathematics is and how you can go from one, if you make a change of slight degree in the calculation, you can go from one end to the other. If you change the pathway of calculational theorem, if you change the assumptions in the equation, you can go a long way from reality. And then I understood the same thing was applicable to physics equations and the amount of assumptions we were making about the speed of light, this and that. I did calculational analysis, and then I did clarification, and then we actually did case studies, flight case studies, Qibla phase studies, and geographical positioning cartographic case studies. So it made me appreciate the dome model through spatial visualization. And also, I found out that a lot of people are incapable of spatial visualization, which Dr. Baloch had a problem in his presentation with me. He wasn't able to imagine. Whenever he tried, he was imagining the sun as 9 million times bigger, 9 million times hotter, 9 million miles away. And he was having a problem imagining the domed, encased reality. So if we move to the next page, we'll be able to see. However, there are limiting factors to my, argument. Um, all our research is calculational and observational only, and this is the case for the other researchers on YouTube as well, because we don't have the resources, the multi-billion-dollar resources. There's an Atlantic treaty that wouldn't let you go past certain areas of Argentina, South Africa, and Australia. And evidence presented in documentaries and fake-based transmission analysis of ESA is only as good as the quality of the videographer, the video specialist. Some video specialists are very good at analyzing and dissecting the video quality, the how it's fake and how it's not fake, and some aren't. Some will just show you, and that's pretty much it. And then another limiting factor is the relaying of experiential analysis of the previous explorers and successful private scientists, because a lot of private scientists had their data taken off, websites taken off, channels removed from YouTube, and it's not a joke. When you put like 120 videos on YouTube and it gets struck off, and you have to sit back and do all the backup all again, you lose your backup, you get hacked, it's a huge amount of loss. So, and we don't have the exploration funding, and we don't have the political influence. So all of these limiting factors are having, can be used as a source of mockery. So after the limiting factors, on the next page, is our. If we move on to the next page, I'd like to discuss. I've already thanked Dr. Baloch, who lives in Abingdon, Maryland, for his contribution. He obviously isn't very keen on it, but I hope he will invite a panel back, and we as a society from Humberside can go and interact with him. I've been reading the YouTube comments quite earnestly, and the value and caliber of globe criticism, from globies I received was very subpar, and most of it was rooted in personal attacks, and I'm quite switched off by that. So yeah, I've already mentioned the censure on YouTube, but I'd like to talk about the nature of scientific investigation. A scientific investigation, or any investigation, should be testable, verifiable, observable, recordable, and repeatable. Testable, verifiable, recordable, observable, repeatable. And these words are quite simple. So if you can't replicate as was shown to you, then there is a problem with that investigation. And if the system tells you that for every kilometer there's an 8 centimeters worth of dip, 8 centimeters worth of ditch or a curve, and you do an experiment for a 2,000 mile laser experiment, and you only get 2% of deviation from right to left, not even down, but right to left. And you realize that at 2,000 kilometers, it should have been 8d squared. It should have been 8 centimeter times, it should have been that much of a quite a large dip across the globe, and you should not be able to see that item, even if there was a mirage.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage. You typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage. of the Chicago skyline. Chicago's beyond the horizon, should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space.
Water is curved on the globe model. It has to, because it has to do 360 degrees back around to itself. It has to create a sphere, and it has to be water still. So all water must be curved. The average curvature is about 8 inches per mile squared. Here we are, Utah Lake, 13.7 miles from point to point. We're going to have about 125 feet of curvature drop. And here I'd actually already found my dad's flashlight, but we'll get to that here soon.
There it is. Nice and clear. You see me or just only the light?
Only the light. Here's some right. Okay, now. Put your hand in front of it. And it's gone. Take it off. And back.
That makes you think that's where I began, because if an equation isn't standing true, you have a major problem. Because equations are the founding principles of computing, and if equations aren't standing to the task, then you have a huge problem. And that's where refraction and reflection comes in. Now, electromagnetic waves, one of the things that Dr. Baloch failed to understand was, I was mentioning visible light and electromagnetic rays. First of all, he confused, why doesn't water or ice travel through vacuum or something? He's mentioned something like that. But I had to quickly correct him, and it really annoyed me that he didn't even know that space had vacuum, complete pin drop vacuum, and only electromagnetic waves can travel through it. That said, there are 7 kinds of electromagnetic waves. So there is all the way from gamma rays, X-rays, UVA, UVB, UVC, UVC, and then you have visible. Now, visible light, the light we can see, has 7 colors: Roigbiv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Then you have, so violet is at the UV end, and red is at the infrared end. So after red comes infrared, then microwaves, then radio waves. These are the visible spectrum components. So, and then you have, so these are I think 14 kinds of electromagnetic waves, if all in all total. So all of them travel. Now, electromagnetic waves are transverse in nature, whereas sound waves or waves that require a medium for transmission are longitudinal in nature. The primary earthquake waves, seismic waves, are longitudinal, and the secondary waves are transverse. Similarly, water waves are transverse, but water is water. It's matter. Electromagnetic waves aren't matter, although they contain photons accelerating in as a function of E field and orthogonal E field B fields in time, in space-time continuum. They are massless. Phonons that form sound waves are massless as well, but they are oscillating in a different manner to photons. Electric fields and B fields oscillate orthogonally to each other. So waves have certain properties. They can diffract, refract, reflect, transmit, they can get transmitted, they can get absorbed, they can get diffracted, which is bending around corners. They can get refracted, which is going from thinner or lighter media to denser media, thicker media, from air to glass, air to oil, air to water, and they can do it backwards as well, from water to air, oil to water, oil to air, glass to oil, glass to water, glass to air. They can do it better. It happens both ways. And then you have reflection. That's simple for plane mirrors, but in nature there aren't any plane mirrors. They're more like concave and concave systems. Um, so electromagnetic waves, they actually uh, they do undergo all of these issues. And one thing that Dr. Baloch had a difficult time understanding is that only these waves can transmit through the the vacuum. And once they do reach the Earth, and that's how the modern science tells us that, and then they begin to heat, and then they begin to spread luminosity as a function of time, which is in lumens candela, and then you have a power distribution from sunlight, watts per meter squared. So nature of scientific investigation is that it has to be observable, repeatable, verifiable, testable, recordable. If you can't, if you can't see the equation getting fulfilled, there's a serious problem there. And Dr. Baloch, didn't know about the media and the vacuum conditions and how things, arrive according to modern science, how things are happening. And that's where I think the dissonance was. So this is why after Rudolphine tables were corrupted, Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo Galilei, they worked very hard to produce a bastardized version of astrology, to yield astronomy, because astrology used to be one subject back in the day. It was just one subject. The spiritual impact of the stars was no different to the actual rotational dynamics of it. They were more concerned about the spirit, and they were observing the stars, the stellarium, and they were taking guidance, all sorts of guidance from it. But when astronomy comes into light, subjects like astrometry, astrochemistry, astrobiology, astronomy, astrophysics came into light, and then they started studying it with patronage from NASA, and that's how things started changing until 1970s, when actual transmission of the hoax moon landing, and then everything was concretized. No one ever questioned NASA ever again. No one ever questioned the globe model ever again. People were linked onto the belief that yes, that is correct, that is true. Now, in terms of electromagnetic wave radiation, they undergo diffraction, refraction, reflection, transmission, absorption, scattering, dispersion. Dispersion is another Newtonian phenomena, whereby if you take a light and you put a prism in front of a triangular prism, it splits into 7 colors. Herschel and Critter worked on it, and Newton worked on it as well. And Herschel and Critter also invented or figured out the UV lights, the UV radiation. So what I'm trying to say is all these waves we call light, all the way from radio to gamma wave, they're all forms of light. And they have all of them have the same velocity, but they have the same capacities of properties as well: refraction, reflection, diffraction, transmission, absorption, diffraction, dispersion, scattering. What the thing is, the problem is, if you are look, gases, if you say that Earth is a ball of gas, first of all, that doesn't stand correct, because if you have vacuum and you have a ball of gas and a rock with gas around it and water stuck to it magically, and it's rotating at 1,000 miles per hour, and then going around the sun at large speeds, Um, the centripetal acceleration is not large enough to keep the water stuck, and it would centrifugally, the water would just splash out and would just leave the surface of the stone, because at the end of the day you're just saying that Earth is a very glorified, large, glorified, a stone asteroid with water stuck to it and ice at the bottom and the top. Okay, now if you have gas, the first thing that would disappear into the vacuum will be the gas atmosphere. The gas atmosphere would be sucked out of the Earth under pressure of the vacuum, because in vacuum versus the Earth, they will develop a very, very large pressure differential, and nothing can protect it, especially when you say that the magnetic field of the Earth is 55 microtesla. It's very, very inefficiently insufficient for it to be able to, number one, stop to form an atmosphere to stop the gases from leaking out and from getting absorbed into the pressure differential of the space. And number three, very difficult for it to, so they say that this 55 microtesla B field, magnetic field around the Earth, generated by the magnetic poles, is sufficient to deflect all the harmful radiation of the sun, which are basically charged muons, neutrinos, antineutrinos, and a shower of charged electrons, proton, neutrons coming from the solar winds, and they are deflected to the poles where they appear as green aurora borealis. That magnetic field over such a large area is very, very, very insufficient. It would not be able to deflect all the solar shower and make it appear as aurora borealis, which is the green lights of the North Pole and the South Pole. So my plea to the audience is that now that we established the wave nature, we need to look at the gas phase nature. You say that you're surrounded by, thermosphere, mesosphere, ionosphere, this sphere, that sphere of gases, layers of gases, ozone, and now these gases. Gas phase is unable to transmit. It cannot reflect. It cannot reflect. Gases cannot reflect because of their density, because of their molecular structure. The molecules are very, very far apart. They have very high intermolecular distances. They cannot form a composite to be able to reflect any rays, any lights back. For HARP to work, which it does, and weaponized weather modification, which Bill Gates has a huge share in, will not be able to work if there was a gas atmosphere. HARP can only work when there's a solid crystalline dome, concave dome on top, to which you fire the radiation. It fires it back at the required, desired coordinates. So this is what my point is, and I'd like to invite further discussion from future panelists about the gas phase of the nature of gas phase, and why HARP can't work without a crystalline solid dome. And we all know that internet isn't working due to hyperoptic SATCOM, geosync and geostat SATCOM systems. It's a huge network of underwater marine cables, very, very thick, powerful cable laid on the ocean floor, ocean bed. And that's how they reach from country to country, from harbor to harbor, port to port, and then it gets carried on from there to city to city, and then district to district. People often say, "Oh wow, how are you able to deny GPS then?" Because GPS is certainly satellite based, and it's I'd like to tell you that GPS is run by a system called trilateral triangulation. Geographic triangulation between tower networks, and they've got towers in small islands, and these satcom companies, and they do triangulation from all parts, of the domed disk. And it's very, very efficient. It's very efficient because um, the tower network has been operational since at a smaller scale since World War One, and then expanded the system as a function of time from there onwards. Um, and it's the tower system that provides your GPS, and there's advanced research available from channels like Eric Dubé and other channels that are doing work on this architectural model of the Earth, which is in complete opposition of the NASA, RASA, JAXA model. JAXA is the Japanese space company. And So, I mean, what I don't understand is that if you're so advanced, if you've got Hubble in in the orbit of the Earth, why have these satellites not been turned once, at least once in their whole lifetime, to look back at the so-called planet and take a picture of it rotating axially and then rotating around the sun? Logically speaking, rather than looking at dark parts of the sky, dark parts of the universe, and mapping dots and dots of stars out and then naming them and naming the systems and this and that, the first thing, logically or naturally speaking, according to human reaction, any space agency would do is to map their own local orbit, own local transaxial orbit, and then map its own local solar system. And why haven't they done that? I mean, I've watched many NASA transmissions where it's clear CGI. For anyone who studied a basic bit of CGI, you should be able to see why it looks so fake. It looks so fake that advanced students of advanced graphic design would be able to see that they'd be able to hint at it. They'd be able to see that there's something a bit computerized about it. And Photoshop, NASA's still photoshopping images, and Muslims don't seem to care about it. They say it doesn't concern our faith. We won't be questioned about it. If you weren't, if it's not relevant, if you aren't going to be questioned about it, then whenever you declare the glory of heavens and whenever you explain the magnanimity of Allah subhanahu, why do you choose this model then? Every religious ceremony in which the elders are declaring the glory of heavens, they're using this particular model that there are billions and billions of galaxies, billions and billions of planets. We are only a mere but creation, and look how magnanimous the Almighty is for creating such a vast creation, and this and that. Look, NASA has found this, NASA has found that, and they continue to compromise and compromise religion before science, and not the other way around. I'd like to talk about the fact that they are photoshopping it, and it's directly linked to cartographic inaccuracies. In the past, there have been 3 different kinds of mapping, cartographic configurations that were used for geographic mapping, map tracking. So the first one was Peter Gall's. The second one is I think one's Peter Gall, the other one's Peter Gall, and then they have um, um, one where Europe looks a lot bigger. So I'd like to just get back to that point in a second, but the 3 types of map projections, you have the first one is Peter Gall's. Peter Gall devised a map projection, and so there's the orthographic projection, and then there is conic projection. The 3 types of conic projections: secant conical projections, and central conical projection, and polyconic projection. And then you have cylindrical projection, equal area projection, stereographic projection, Mercator projection. Mercator is part of the cylindrical projection. And so you have Peter Gall's projection, Mercator projection, and you have the Homolocene projection, equal area projection of combination of the areas. And cartography is a very complex field, and how it's been because in the 1500, if you look at all the maps from 1500s, they are all azimuthal equidistant, and they're very, very accurate. Look, if the maps weren't accurate, then Columbus would be happening every time. But Columbus only happened once, and even that he did it deliberately. He didn't actually, wanted to land in India. He had no business in India at that time, because there was quite a lot of bargaining going on for Indian. The Mughals were very, very strong there, and they would have had to fight their teeth out. If you look at that particular geopolitical scenario, Columbus, with his starved naval armada that was exhausted by English artillery and French attacks, and they had different alliances back then, and it wasn't possible for Columbus to actually. They were looking for new land. That's why they went into Latin America and wiped out the pagan, satanic Red Indians. That refused help from Muslims, and were very hostile to Muslims, these satanic Red Indians. And then if in 1542, because in I think 1300s, the Vasco da Gama, he charted the route of around the Cape of Good Hope. That's when in the 1300s, when Portuguese and English and French, and they started trying to conquer India, but the Mughals were resisting, because Mughals did not have a naval armada, but they were very, very strong infantry and military men. Their strength was in army, whilst the strength of Europeans was navy and rocket design. And then you had Tipu Sultan as well at that time. So it was not possible for the Portuguese to compete with the French and the English. And also Spanish were not really in tune with Indian subcontinent. Their goal was to go towards the other side. And they ended up with, Latin America, Peru, Argentina, Central America, and America, because if you look at the history of the United States, you see that before it formed into a union after the fake Civil War, it was Spanish States of America, French States of America, and English States of America, and after that it dissolved into one. And so America is a very dark, dirty, crude, blood-curdling history, very sickening history. It's not a very nice place to be in. So basically, the types of projections are three. There is azimuthal, zenithal projection that they use for astrometry. Then you have the conical and the conic projection, and the cylindrical projection. And then there is the mathematical or conventional projection obtained from mathematical calculations, like where they do calculational cartography. So the planar, azimuthal, or zenithal projection allows a flat sheet of touch with the globe. It basically superimposes the globe onto a flat sheet, which is not possible. If you do that, then you shouldn't be able to get all of the globe on one piece of sheet of paper. You cannot translocate all of the components of the globe onto, because you'll have to put the other side on at the back of the sheet of paper. You can't put it in the same sheet of paper. That's what people don't understand. They say, oh, that's azimuthal equidistant and just a 2D projection of a 3D globe. You can't compress a 3D globe, a ball, into a disc. You cannot take a ball and compress it into a disc. There will be curves, there will be protrusions, and not all of it would be converted into a disc. You'd have to remove pieces of it in order to make it a disc. Let me explain. If you have a computer program and then you convert a globe with specks of ink on it, and then you convert it into a disk, some of the ink would need to be presented at the back of the disk. So that's the problem with the azimuthal argument. This is why the azimuthal equidistant map that they show, that the United Nations and all the ancient maps show, it cannot be a globe being translated into a 2D. If it were, then some of the parts of geography would be on the backside of the disk. So now, so this is a very specific kind of a deception. Only those people who've done calculational cartography, which I did in school, you should be able to understand it. Those people who have done it, and we never got questions like difficult questions, because if we did, then we'd have to place it on the other side. We'd have to place some part of the area on the backside, and it's not possible to do it. The bottom and the middle part of Latin America, and the bottom and the middle part of Africa, and the bottom part of subcontinent and Australia would go on the other side of the disk. That's what I'm trying to say. So according right now in the world, there are three categories: planar or azimuthal, zenithal projection, mnemonic projections, stereographic projection, orthographic projection. Then you have conical projections. Like conical means like you're looking from the top. You're looking like a bird's eye view of the, and central conical, tangential, secant, polyconic projections. And this is what I believe is Peter Gall's format, where this is the kind of projection we're using at the moment, and that makes Europe look far bigger. Greenland, Europe, America, North America, Russia look far bigger than they are, and Canada. And then you have the cylindrical, and then cylindrical projection is, you have equal area projection, Mercator projection, and then you have the conventional calculational projection. So you have 4 different kinds of projections, and each has its own subtypes. So that's quite a complex topic in its own right, and requires a separate program. But so the configurations we're using at the moment are quite deceptive. That's why people, because cartography used to be, taught in the book. It's no longer taught. It's very mild levels of cartography, very, very small basic levels of cartography are performed at GCSE geography level. And maybe a bit in A levels, but they shift geography into population studies, and you don't get to do as much calculations as you ought to have been in geography, because geography used to be a very calculational subject in English syllabus. I don't know about America, but in England, growing up in England, it used to be very, very calculational, but it got dumbed down. Right. So I'm going to go back to refraction and reflection, whereby the audience that's listening to this program needs to have an understanding of advanced optics, like refraction, reflection, transmission, absorption, dispersion, scattering, and a total internal reflection, Snell's law for plane mirror, Snell's law for concave and convex surfaces, mirrors versus lenses. All of this kind of like principal focus, diopter, power, and the ability to form diagrams with diverging and converging lenses. Once you've mastered that, then you'll be able to see what should be happening at a convex surface, whether the gas should transmit or not. So the laws that govern absorption is known as the Beer-Lambert's law. That governs the transmissivity. And one more thing, if the dome was translucent or transparent, then the radiation would go through. Now, please let me clarify that a mirror that may be opaque to light waves, like it doesn't transmit light waves, may be opaque to X-ray, may be transparent to X-rays or gamma rays, or microwaves. So all of these 14 different kinds of light waves we have, 14 different kinds of EM waves. Not all materials are equiproportionally opaque or transparent to all waves. For example, let's just say material A. Material A, you make a lens out of it. It looks transparent. It would let visible light through, but it would never it may not let X-ray through. It may reflect microwaves. It may reflect one of the, so that's the thing. So basically, it's an open knowledge that high frequency active auroral research program it's an ionospheric weather manipulation program that was jointly funded by U.S. research facility, and this particular frequency, it's I think it's radio or microwave, and so this means that the dome is opaque to microwave, but it's letting the light through because we can clearly see the stars and the different Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and whatnot. But we could see that it's visible, transparent to visible light, but it's not transparent to microwaves and radio waves. That's why radio works so finely all over the earth. Like radio waves do not get very much attenuated. Light waves get attenuated, X-rays, all of the other part of the spectrum gets attenuated. But radio, like radio stations, they can transmit for like so many miles, thousands of miles, and then they don't get, which means the dome we're living under is opaque to radio waves, and it allows the bouncing of in and out of radio waves over throughout the expanse of this flat Earth. And a vast majority of the manipulation that these governments and agencies are doing are through microwaves and radio waves, which means that radio waves and microwaves must be, the dome must be opaque to it and translucent or transparent to other kinds of rays. And there's wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in there, because radio waves and microwaves are the least ionizing harmful, because there are two types of radiation: ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation. And then there is acoustic radiation, which is sound waves. So ultrasound, ultrasound is acoustic radiation, whereas ionizing radiation, X-ray, gamma ray, UVA, and UVB, UVC are ionizing radiation, and non-ionizing radiation comprises of visible light, microwaves, and radio waves. So, one more thing I'd like to say, that ionizing radiation, there's intense amount of, because I studied radiation physics at postgraduate level, and we techniques such as CT scanning, PET, and all of that's done by PET scanning, CT scanning, X-ray, DEXA scans. They're done by ionizing radiation, which is X-rays and gamma rays, whereas acoustic radiation is what comes out of ultrasound. Ultrasound is what does acoustic radiation, and acoustic radiation has a lot of harmful effects as well, and they're very subtle to the fetus. Which is why ultrasounds are not very healthy for the fetus. It can cause intrauterine warming and heating effects, and it can have drastic effects as well. And the X-rays, the ionizing radiation, is quite carcinogenic, and it can lead to cancerous growth. With that, I'd like to just link the story of Tesla and Edison. Tesla is a legend, no doubt, and all the electricity we're using, the modern electricity, it was harnessed and industrialized by Tesla's studies, and they took over Tesla's studies and they made him redundant. Ford, General Electric, the leader or the owner of General Electric, was, just at that time you had Chase brothers, and you had the other banking brothers of America that formed the other bank, and they robbed Tesla blind. And Tesla then spent his, he's no angel, he was Bosnian, Christian or atheist, whatever, but he spent his last years in a hotel room, spending time with pigeons. That man was robbed of all his hard work and patents and everything. And General Electric, Henry Lawrence, sorry, I think founder of General Electric was, so it was a group: J.P. Morgan, Thomson, Coffin, Houston, and Edison. Lots of like, I mean, I would like to call Edison the bandit, the robber of the scientific inventions. I mean, he had a whole full team working for him, and he took credit for all the patents and inventions because of legal contracts, because the rest of the people were his employees, and they were working for him, not the other way around. And so he ended up, robbing Tesla blind, and Tesla lived a very destitute life in a hotel with pigeons. He used to feed pigeons as an activity, and Tesla said that someday you will tax my technology. And then, I mean, you have, I mean, he learned from, I mean, he modified and worked upon the principles of Renaissance scientists, Renaissance spirit worshipping, satanic, secularist European Renaissance scientists that were anti-religion, but they were pro to spirit worship, because Newton has been known to be a sexual sadist. He was a master of torture. When hardened criminals would never give up any information, would come in, Newton was picked to not sodomize. I don't know whether he sodomized them, but he may have, stuck up electrical circuits up the rectal electric shocks. I'm not too sure about that, but he was such a master of torture that even the most refined and suave criminals would confess. And Newton was feared. He was literally feared for his sadomasochistic torture techniques and the patience and proficiency of torture. He was a virgin. He was asexual, but he was dead hungry for knowledge, and he was so. When he wrote his Principia Mathematica, it was all a philosophical occult book, a book of occult philosophy, and the relationship of Ramanujan with the Hindu demonic goddess who used to give him all the formulae in scrolls in a dream, and these scrolls were drenched in blood, and and how he got all the formulae, and the benzene scientist who saw snakes in a dream forming a benzene molecule, and all of the Renaissance scientists were helped by demonic jinn, satanic entities, to carry out these industrial revolutionary inventions. And Europeans may not lay claim to all of the architecture, industrial architecture, because there were civilizations of Tartaria, Phoenicians, and antediluvians who lived prior. And if you excavate Europe, there are cities upon cities underground that are left untouched, upon which Europe was built after the mud flood. And I'm deviating a little bit, but I'm going to come back to Edison and General Electric. Now, please bear with me. Right now, we have found out that the X-rays, gamma rays, and all of these ionizing radiation waves are very, very harmful. They're very harmful, and they induce gliomas, blastomas, cancers of all sorts, sarcomas, and gliomas. However, let me tell you something: the same radiation and the combination of it is coming from the sun, but it doesn't seem to cause any problems to 90% of the humans, apart from a certain kind of white race that gets infected by. But what happened with General Electric and the patent politics is extremely interesting. The patent politics, where when they took over the patents from Tesla, there were two kinds of patents. One patent was a waveform, and the other was a pulsed form, pulsed ejection. That kind of a form. Now, what they did was they patented they hid the waveform, they ignored the waveform, and they took the pulsed ejection form for a number of pros and cons, whatnot. I'm not too sure. They took the pulsed ejection machine, got it patented, and that machine format is used in all the microwaves, dentists, X-rays, CT scan, PET scan, DEXA scan, and all that. And that pulsed, so when you have a waveform, a peaceful waveform of radio wave, X-ray, that's not going to harm you. But when you convert it into pulses, that's when it becomes harmful. to normal bone tissue, normal human tissue, and whatnot. So there's been quite a lot of scientific corruption and manipulation by corporations and by these influential people who had car companies back in the day, who had banks in the day, and they did intense amount of manipulation that had ripples across the world. So yeah. So the curvature equation I talked about earlier is I'm going to retouch on it, and there's a particular formula for this.
8 inches per mile square.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Habib. I was quite 8 inches per mile squared. So now 8 inches. Uh, going to do a bit of a calculation. So 8 inches per miles squared. So now, for every 8 inches per mile. So let's just say we do 1,000 kilometers, and then we can calculate. So it would be 78.32 kilometers worth of dip. So so if you situate two lasers, one laser is the transmitter laser is at point A, and the receiver laser is at point B, and they have a distance of 1,000 kilometers, which is less than miles, the 1,000 miles would be a lot larger than 1,000 kilometers. So they're 1,000 kilometers, which is quite nominal, and laser can travel that far. That doesn't matter. So once you fire the laser, and the point B should be 78.3196 kilometers beneath the horizon, should not be, should be, that's how beneath it should be on a ball. And no amount of refraction or mirage formation, which is another hoax, should bring it up. But these experiments were only 2% off. 2%. In physics, as I mentioned to Dr. Baloch, we keep a space for 5% uncertainty. Every instrument, mobile phone, fax machine, laptop, they have a 5%, they have their own uncertainty. A laptop's comprised of many circuits and many sentient electronic equipments. So every equipment in that particular laptop will have a systematic error, which is delta U over U times 100. So then that systematic error gets accumulated over time, and every laser, every telescope will have a systematic error, like a deviation away from the true value. False positive, false negative, true positive, true negative, accurate versus precise. Precise is like, let me give you an example. Precise is what people consider to be true, and being cool with people, and what society believes. And accurate is what the truth is. So accuracy may not be precise, but precise and precise doesn't have to be accurate either. But when it's accurate and precise, that's like ideal condition. Like when all the people are following one truth and the truth, then it's all ideal. But most of the time, people are trying to be precise rather than accurate. And according to physics, accurate is the true value, whereas precise means the most popular value, where the results are most high in value. Sorry, the most frequent amount of results, frequency. So the result for the result they got was like 76. When they fired the lasers 1,000 kilometers apart, it hit the receiver by only a 2% deviation. It shouldn't have hit the laser. It shouldn't have, by virtue of this equation. It shouldn't have hit it at all. But it did. That disproves. I can't take. It's not testable, recordable, observable, repeatable, verifiable, because the verification failed. Someone did an experiment, and the verification failed. Someone tested it, someone observed it, someone repeated it, someone failed at verifying it. I can't This is against the scientific method of, being observable, recordable, repeatable, verifiable, testable. That's when I broke down. That's when I broke out of it, because that was when an equation isn't going to, then that's it. And every coding every equation that's been described in the Quran or by the Quran or has been tested upon the Quran has turned out to be true in literal and figurative meaning. And that's the miracle of Quran, that it's completely mathematical to the point, to the actual point. And so the other thing I'd like to talk about is the types of magnetic materials and the nature of magnetism. I told Dr. Baloch, I was asked a question by Dr. Baloch that why, if the North Pole is in the center and all the magnetism is beaming out of it, why doesn't it pull all the winds and rain towards it? And why isn't it concentrated in the middle? And why is it not sparse across? I'd like to tell the audience that are interested in this astrometric architectural heuristics topic. Not all of the Muslim audiences, they don't seem to care much about it because of Maslow's hierarchy. Not everyone has had a STEM background, and very few of the STEM background enthusiasts want to explore this topic. So I would advise those who don't like this topic not to criticize it for those who are researching it, because some people play golf, others play badminton, and it's all about aptitudes and how serious you are about a particular research topic. So magnetism, please, Habib, try to understand. You can search it as well as I speak. There are four kinds. The first one is diamagnetic, then you have paramagnetic, and then you have ferromagnetic, and then you have antimagnetic. Four kinds of materials in creation. First one is diamagnetic. These materials, they tend to move from a region of higher B field concentration to a region of lower B field concentration, which is less dense flux lines per unit area. And then you have paramagnetic materials that move from a region of lower B field flux per unit area, which is flux is d phi over dt, which is BA over T. And they move from a region of low B field concentration to a region of higher B field concentration. And then you have ferromagnetic materials that can be magnetized, that can magnetize, that can induce magnetism, that can accept magnetism, that can make other elements that can influence magnetism and spread magnetism. It's iron, nickel, and cobalt. Okay. What you need to realize is that water, soil, lithography, salts, the rocks, they aren't, rain and water, they aren't magnetic, so they're not going to be affected by magnetic induction or magnetism. They may suffer from heating effects or acceleration in an electric field or B field. They may experience but they will never feel attracted or delineated. That's the thing. Now, the birds do follow the navigational B field patterns. The research has shown birds follow the magnetic field lines. They can see it. That's well and good. And they do it for navigational purposes. And they follow the B field lines, and then they stop. They go from go from summer to winter, winter to summer. So they spend their summer in winter regions and winter in summer regions, and they do it. That's fine. Sharks follow it, whales follow it, and their life is dependent on it. I haven't had the need of looking at beefy lines for going from college to uni to school to employment. I didn't need to. So humans are here for a different purpose. They are to be tested, and they are to ascend to higher levels, whatnot. So I'd like to just make it very clear that you have diamagnetic, paramagnetic, ferromagnetic, and antiferromagnetic materials. Please learn a bit about magnetostatics and magnetodynamics before you ask this question, because there's a whole science behind it. Just like there is electrodynamics and electrostatics, electrodynamics is circuitry, and then you have AC theory in which you study advanced circuits. Then you have you have analog electronics, which is a little bit more difficult. Then you have digital electronics, which is far more difficult. Similarly, you have progressions in magnetism, magnetostatics, magnetodynamics, electromagnetism, motor, coil, generator, AC, DC currents, resistance, impedance, reactance, this and that, their own units, Henry, and you have, so, and then you have Hall effect, all kinds of phenomena taking place in electromagnetism. And but we're not talking about electromagnetism. We're talking about, this is why I didn't talk about superconducting magnets or supercooled magnets or electromagnets, because that's industrial. Those are industrial items. I'm going to talk about natural magnetodynamics, and which is the nature of materials, and it all links to magnetic permittivity, how their level of magnetizability, how much magnetization can they absorb? Are they pro-magnetic or anti-magnetic or diamagnetic or paramagnetic or anti-ferromagnetic or ferromagnetic? This and that. This is how. So magnetic materials study is a whole study in its own right. You can't just ask. I did provide the answer, but Dr. Baloch it flew over his head, and he didn't even. Now, I love him. He's fantastic, and now I'm going to now progress over and tell the audience molten metal cannot, and I repeat, cannot generate magnetism, because molten metal, look, magnetism only happens in solidified, solid, concretized, like you've got hematite and magnetite, lodestones, like magnetic lodestone materials found naturally in the earth, out of which compasses are made, and they all point to north pole. They don't point to any south pole. Ancient compasses, they only had one needle. They didn't have two needles. What I'm trying to say is metals, a molten metal cannot be magnetic, because when you melt a metal, all the domains and the molecular and atomic structure breaks down. The magnetizability, magnetic permeation, it breaks down. They go into a plasma state of higher excitation, and they're no longer able to maintain the domain structure required for magnetizability, magnetization. So if you move on to the next page, please, I can then carry on. One of the things, I hope I cleared it, but one of the other discussion I had with Dr. Baloch was the fact that about the similarity of the terms used in Quran for embryo growth, staged growth versus lunar staged growth. And biblical scholars I've been listening to, look, not look, flat earth was started by Christian extremists, crusaders, these aren't people in on it. These are rogue people studying Bible, rogue on their own. They're not part of any society or secret society controlled opposition, because these are people that weren't even taken seriously when they began. But once they began to convince and gather the crowd and defeat Globies in debate after debate on Discord and all the other social media platforms, and they had concretized arguments that were very, very solid, and Globies could not find an argument for it, apart from gravity or this and that, they began to win, and more they started investing into it, thinking the world would change. But no, YouTube censored it so badly that a lot of them lost their accounts. These were Christian fundamentalists. Yes, they were Christian fundamentalists, but they aren't. Masons would never talk about it. Templars would never talk about it. Jesuits would never talk about it. Rosicrucians would never talk about it. Quakers would never talk about it. We have so many secret societies in Britain Quakers, Jesuits, Rosicrucians, this and that. We have that. The symbol of Barmy Army in cricket is Rosicrucian. You have Quakers, you have Templars. In England, all the powerful posts, administrative posts, you have Templars appointed there in the masters in the courts. Very powerful judicial positions are with Templar, are under Templar control. So you can't. They would never talk about it. They would never. So these people, yes, it was these European Christians that start, because they have, look, it's not about who start, it's about Maslow's hierarchy. A lot of Muslims are offended. They say, you shouldn't be talking about it. It's a waste of time. Talk about practical things. Talk about making money. That's where you are. I don't need to make money because we have already done it. We've already done it. We've progressed. And that, I know it's going to make you more envious, the audience, but you've got millionaires, then you've got billionaires, then you've got people who are running and controlling the billionaires and millionaires. So we obviously have enough, we've done our, look, if you've been in Europe for 3 generations and you are still stuck at practical things and you still don't have enough FU money, and I'm sorry, you need to sort yourself out, and don't hate people who've progressed. Don't hate people who've formed a society thinking that, oh, that's ridiculous, that's this. No, you don't know. Someone may be ahead of you, and you should appreciate it a little bit. So I still have to do my research, and I don't know whether Quran uses the same verbal grammatical terminology for lunar growth stages and embryonic growth. If it does, then boy oh boy, do we have proof, because that's very subtle coded subliminal proof. And one more thing I told Dr. Baloch, and he didn't really appreciate it, is that the temperature of the moonlight is cooler than the nightshade. And they've done actual experiments on YouTube, and they took the temperature under the shade in nighttime, and then they took the temperature in the moonlight, and it turned out to be cooler. And the word munira is an independent light source, meaning it doesn't mean like you're reflecting it. The nature of moonlight is electromagnetically different to that of sun. It really is, and its temperature is different as well. Now, if I often think, is daylight because of sun, or is it or at nighttime is a different phenomena? Because if the moon was reflecting the sunlight of the sun, and then it should come down at the same temperature, regardless. Because if sun is dictating the nighttime and the daytime, if sun's presence illuminates and gets rid of the nighttime, and nighttime is not an entity in its own, then the moon's light, the moon that is supposedly reflecting sun's light and is passing it down to Earth, should have at least the same. Why is it so many times cooler than why is it cooler than the shade, and also so many times cooler than the sunlight if it's the same light? Yes, I understand about attenuation, but if it's the same light, it should at least be at the same temperature, because electromagnetic waves aren't affected by temperature. They're affected by absorption, scattering, diffraction. And yet temperature differential can take place, but not this much. So I often wonder whether, and the growth phases of moon, Quran says that we grow it back, is also very, very mystically suspicious, and makes you rethink about it. Now, so we're moving closer and closer to the idea that the what was shown in TV is incorrect. And in the previous transmissions of NASA, Mars, in the 1990s and to early 2000s, the rovers that were roaming on the surface of Mars, they it was so quizzical that someone delivered a presentation on it in 2007. They said that if the rover is on it, then we should not be able to see the backside of the rover. We should not be able to. Who's photographing the backside of the rover, and what's going on there? And there's nothing attached to the backside of the rover, like a tripod or a selfie stick. something of that arrangement should be visible, but nothing is visible. And then NASA cleared that error, and it's not been visible ever since. And in the pictures, the real actual pictures of the NASA in the 1990s and 2000s, where they didn't admit that it was an artist's impression, there was, there were clear pictures of the rover driving, and then had its back pictures, and it will also make you wonder, like, who's taking the back pictures. If the rover's all alone and there's no connection, you can't see a attached selfie stick, that, oh, it could be the back camera attached via selfie stick, and what's taking the pictures. And a lot of people have pointed out that it's the Devon Island in Greenland, Devon Island I think in Utah, or near Grand Canyon, or Devon Island somewhere, Devon Island, that's been used with different color photography to make it look like Mars. So it's very, very interesting, the level of deception that's out there. Now, the other thing I had a blockage on from Dr. Bloch was inertial frames of reference, and that's where quite a lot of equations come into play. And rotational dynamics and symbology differentiation is very, very important. And I talked about vector resolution to determine the resultant force on a moving object. And if you have your own independent velocity in relation to the moving object's velocity in a particular direction, then you would obviously experience a resultant. But he said that you wouldn't experience it, which is against the calculational, arithmetic. So I'd like to introduce a few terms, if you don't mind. Now, for bullets, and I'd like to link it to jet and jet, as well as jet and rocket anatomy. So I'd like to tell you that in physics, if you want to calculate the motion of a bullet, a car, a cart, a horse, anything, accelerating on a road, accelerating in a straight line, accelerating, then it's called linear kinematics. If you want to calculate the velocity of an object that's experiencing circular motion, then it's calculated using circular motion, which is centripetal acceleration, centripetal force, and centrifugal acceleration, centrifugal acceleration. Now, centripetal is real. There's a formula for it: F equals mv squared over r, or m omega squared r, where m is the mass of the object, v squared is the velocity of the object, and radius is the radius around which the object is accelerating in a circle. Or you could also do m omega squared r, which is m times angles mapped, but unit time squared times the radius. But when you're calculating the motion of rockets and jets, and the jets do projectile motion, and the rockets do parabolic, or let me just clarify, just double check. So parabolic. They do parabolic motion. And then there is another concept called, for which the equation is y equals x squared, or you could put it as ax squared plus bx plus c, where alpha beta equals minus b over a, and alpha plus beta is c over a. So jets do a projectile motion, which has its own set of equations, and rockets, hypersonic ICBMs, air to land and land to air missiles. They do a parabolic curve equation, and then air-to-air missiles, they do projectile, sometimes linear and sometimes projectile motion. So this is the different kinds of motion that's taking place in different, in the same 3D world we live in. Okay, so when you have Okay, so now we talked about linear kinematics, circular motion, parabolic motion, projectile motion. And when you talk about rotational dynamics, now that's where it gets a bit confusing for the normal layman. That's when you're talking about a rotating disk upon its axis, or a body mapping angles per unit time, this and that. It gets like a door moving around its hinge, a disk circulating around its own axis, blah blah blah. A cylinder, a hollow cylinder, or a hollow sphere, or and this and that, blah. So that's where the symbology would change, because you're mapping the rate of angles per unit time. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to get to the point that rotational dynamics and symbology differentiation is what we need to sit down and do calculational analysis of. And For example, I'm going to tell you that in linear kinematics, you have Suvat equations: x equals vt, v squared minus u squared equals 2as, x equals ut plus half at squared. Now, when you're calculating parabolic motion or projectile motion, the a becomes g. So that, and then when you're calculating rotational dynamics, you have to think about angular momentum, angular momentum, because linear momentum is p equals mv, and tangent momentum is ft. Now, when you are doing rotational dynamics, you have to look at angular momentum, angular velocity, angular speed. Sorry, not speed, but angular velocity, angular acceleration. So angular torque, angular force, angular, you have to think of everything in terms of angles being mapped per unit time. Right. So, for example, I'd like to say that in the Newton's second law, the linear motion would be F equals m times acceleration, mass times acceleration, whereas in a rotational motion, it would be tau equals inertia times, which is kg per meter squared, times theta alpha. Then momentum in linear motion would be p equals mv, whereas the angular momentum would be inertia times omega, which is 2 pi r over t. And it gets a bit more complex. Kinetic energy in linear motion would be half times the mass times velocity of the object squared, whereas in rotational motion it would be half times inertia, which is kg per meter squared, times omega squared, which is 2 pi r over t squared. And power in linear motion would be force times velocity, whereas power in rotational motion would be tau times omega. What I'm trying to say is the Suvat equations in linear kinematics would be d equals vt, x equals vt, and in angular distance would be omega times t. Then in linear kinematics, it would be v equals u plus at, whereas in angular, it would be omega equals omega plus alpha t. So this is how symbology changes by the nature, as per the nature of the phenomena we're trying to calculate. What I'm trying to say is, please try to understand the engine and anatomy differences of the jet versus rocket. So jet goes for projectile motion. Cars, bullets, horses, they do linear motion. And hyperbolic motion is a bit crazy. I'm not going to go there. Hyperbolic means, like, my goodness, that's like hyperbola would be. That's used for air-to-air missiles, projectile. They use air-to-air missiles, this and that. But the thing is, you need to realize that linear, parabolic is used for missiles, ground to ground, land to land, and land to air. And you have to realize that the jet anatomy is designed for horizontal velocity, whereas rocket anatomy is designed for vertical ascent. Now that I've, clarified it, I'm going to start off with escape velocity topic. This is the amount of velocity that is required for an object to break free from any planet, depending on so this is the radius of the planet, this is the particular g of the planet, the gravitational field strength, and this is the Newtonian gravitational constant, which is 6.667 times 10 to the power minus 11 kg second cube, I think, meters minus squared, I think so, I'm not sure, but it's Newton something, that's Newton's meters squared per kg squared. So what I'm trying to say is, we know that kinetic U equals kinetic energy plus potential energy, which is now if you equate kinetic energy of a system to its potential energy, if you equate it, so you get so U is kinetic energy is half mv squared plus mgr. Now, if you equate mgr equals half mv squared, you get 2gr whole under root equal velocity. That's very basic arithmetic, very, very basic. Now, what you need to realize is this is the radius of the planet. This is the g of the planet. How do we calculate g again? G is calculated as g equals g m over r squared. I'll go into this later. The g is calculated of a planet is calculated as gravitational Newtonian constant times mass of the planet divided by the radius squared of the planet. So this is how you calculate the g. It would vary according to the NASA model. The gravitational field strength would be different for Moon, for Earth. Have you heard of the concept pull? Yes, planets pull. Hi Habib, are you there?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to just ask you, have you ever heard of the concept of the pull, planetary pull, how
Yes.
hard it pulls? So basically, this is what it is. This is how you calculate the pull of the planet. It would be different for Moon, it would be different for Venus, according to the NASA model. Now you take this and you plug it in here and you multiply by the radius of the planet, multiply by 2 whole under root, you get the escape velocity. Now, the escape velocity for Earth is 11 kilometers per second. I want you to please help me out here. So can you please tell me, if it's 11 kilometers per second, how much would it be per minute? Can you please tell me?
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you.
All right, hang on. So that would be, so if it's 11 kilometers per second, which is 11,000 meters per second, yes?
Yeah.
How much would it be per minute? So if it's 11.2, but I'm just making it 11 11 kilometers per second. If it's 11 kilometers per second, should it be 11,000 meters per second as well? Can I make it 11,000 meters per second? Can I, yes. Now, if it's how many seconds do we have in a minute?
60.
60. So if it's doing 11,000 meters per second, how much would it do if it covers 11,000 meters in 1 second, how much would it cover in 60 seconds? We would multiply it by 60, yes?
Yeah.
That would be 660. Now, if it's doing 660,000 meters per minute, how much would it do in an hour? That would be
39.6.
600. Yes, correct. Thank you. Meter. So that's if you convert the meters back into kilometers, that turns out to be 39. Um, 1,600 kilometers per hour. Now, believe you me, I did my calculations, but I didn't expect anyone to, actually, come up with it. But I saw many videos on YouTube where people calculated and they also calculated the upward velocity of the rocket, and it never reached anywhere near 39,600 kilometers per hour, and it never reached anywhere near that. And the professors tell us that, look, when we release the rocket, it's fired, it goes around the earth, it takes multiple orbits around the earth to catch escape velocity, to catch momentum and velocity, and then it shoots out the orbit of the earth. And put through in that video, the rocket fell into the ocean, and they videoed it and they made a big hullabaloo out of it, but then those videos were deleted. There is a video of a camera hitting the dome and scratching off of the surface the balloon that was sent on top, and it was suspended fine, and it was sending the signal back fine, but it didn't go into space. It didn't. It stopped at a particular level.
Our mission as the Civilian Space Exploration Team is to be the first civilian team in history to launch a rocket that reaches space.
All systems are go for launch. T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to leave that for you to think, the audience, that if that is happening to such a level, this is exactly why they've been so successful in astrometric deception, because it's uh, astrometry, astrophysics is like the arts of physics. It's the most qualitative aspect of physics, and least interested. A very small minority of people take interest in astrophysics. So it's more like a cult, if I may say so. It's a cult of like-minded people who are at the top, who are ruling, and the people at the bottom are hyper compartmentalized. They don't know what the bigger picture is. And they're very happy to have the job and to defend the system. Now, one more thing I wanted to talk to you about is that, and quite a lot of people like this topic, this point, is that we all remember having grown up in the 90s and the 2000s, and all of us saw Star Trek and Star Wars movies at some point in our lives, even albeit as briefly as possible. All of those particular movies, and I can challenge you, and in all the other space fiction movies that we were shown by the dozens, inundated by space movies in the 90s and the 2000s, we never saw a planet in perpetual rotational orbit or axial orbit whilst the spaceship was entering it. All the planets at all times in all space movies have been shown to be stationary globes. Now, why is that? Is it because it's unrealistically difficult for an object to be in that particular kind of double motion, one motion around itself, the other motion around a larger body? Or is it, is it that they aren't able to depict it because of their own limitation? And I'd like to talk about the fact that because of there's a huge, very, very popular Hollow Earth theory, and even the Islamic traditions. There's a book called Ajaib al-Makhluqat, Tafsil al-Hawanat. Ajaib al-Makhluqat is the name. It's published by Imam al-Qazwini. Qazwini in before the attack of the Mongols, 1280s or something, 1280. Habib, it mentions a large myriad of creatures and the spheres of earth they live in, and it teaches you exactly as to what kind of creatures live in what kind of center of the earth and layer of the earth and this and that. And I'd like to tell the audience that hollow earth theory can only work if under a flat earth theory, domed theory, because you can't have a stable channel system in a globe earth. You can only have a stable channel layered network in a flat bed earth where it's got layer after layer after layer, and people and civilizations are living under the earth in different layers of it. And so in the end, I mean, we're not at the end, but I'd like to remind the audience of the large, big lies we've been fed throughout. 9/11, 7/7, Al Qaeda, vaccinations, all of these large lies that have come out of modern Western civilization. Feminism, women's liberation, destruction of the nuclear family, psychiatric disorders, crime surge, prison industry, and torture industry, and military industrial complex. All of these things that came out of a specific race, specific breed of people that are genetically very, very different to the rest of the humans. Behind all of it, behind all of it is a unanimous gesture of Iblisi, the Jalic progression. And those people who don't believe in 9/11 being a hoax, or laser, they need to look into 7D holographic laser technology, which was invented by, I think, a British or a European Nobel laureate who got a Nobel Prize for it. And it was also depicted in the movie GoldenEye, James Bond GoldenEye. And it was a machine that could form a 3D model of in form of a hologram. Lots of newscasters have been the 7D holographic technology has been displayed in San Francisco and Dubai leisure parks and leisure centers, and you can search it yourself. And newscasters also delivered their lectures and their reports through a hologram in the studio. They weren't there, but their hologram was brought into the studio. So 7D holographic technology, it's a very, very powerful technology that may have been used in the assistance of 9/11. And there's a particular video that shows the plane that was about to hit the tower. It was quite translucent. It was quite transparent, and it was unmarked, green plane. And so what's the purpose of 7D? So the purpose of 7D holographic technology is that you mask the weapon in the form of an image. So they show you an image, but then they fire a laser beam through that image so that you don't find out what actually happened. And similarly, they can use the 7D holographic technology for Blue Beam project, which is a project that the aliens are invading the Earth from Pleiadians and from distant galaxies to colonize us, and then we are under attack, and all of the armies and militaries need to unite, but we are failing and defeating. Oh, here comes a benevolent, gracious, gorgeous man who defeated the aliens and declares himself as the Messiah, Mashiach. And the Jews and all the Ashkenazis are supporting him, and he's enthroned as the unanimous king of the world. And then he declares prophethood. Then he declares sovereignty as the creator. And then whoa, boom, kaboom, and So we all need to realize where this is heading, because one of the things about conspiracy theories is that people who hide the truth from you, they know that one day you will get to the truth. But in order to delay or to completely mislead you, they erect structures of irrelevant, unrealistic, stupefying, stupid conspiracy theories in one corner of the street, so that you'd never be able to get to the actual truth. They'll tell you there's secret helium mining going on the moon. There's anti-gravity technology being tested that can take you to moon in 2 hours. There is secret tunnel network where alien contact is established and friendly aliens are assisting America. They'll tell you that they'll show you videos whereby alien spaceships are parked and are observing the atmosphere of the Earth. And they'll tell you all of these things so that you'll begin to think in that particular direction, and you'll never ever be able to dismiss the globe model. And for you, the flat Earth model would become like, oh, it's another conspiracy. Oh, it's this and that. It's PSYOP. It's Templar PSYOP. Why those people in the comments of Dr. Baloch's video, why do you think the Templars or the Masons would propagate something that they've been hiding for the last 70 years? Why do you think the Quakers and the Rosicrucians and the Jesuits would bring something out to the line? This is personal research. This isn't yes, the controlled opposition, like they've infiltrated the societies, no doubt about that. But even if they are, that our job is just to disseminate the truth, and the rest is history. So all of these, this is not the right time to apply all of your dissonances onto this topic, because you should have applied it on alien contact. You should have applied your dissonances on 9/11. You should have applied your dissonance on tunnel network where friendly aliens live. You should have applied it on aliens observing the Earth's atmosphere, the Pleiadians, the Church of Scientology that says that make contact with aliens and these beings will come and inhabit your body and transcend you to a higher plane, this and that, blah blah blah. So, moving on to the next page, I'd like to connect it to the idea of dissonances to gravity and atmosphere, which I mentioned earlier, that if there was a complete vacuum in the space and you had objects with atmosphere or water or material, it would quickly be sucked out. Now, if you say that it's gravity keeping them together, then gravity can't be magnetic gravity can't be generated by molten metal, because molten metal loses its magnetic domain properties and is no longer magnetic. Once you melt a metal, it can no longer remain magnetic. Then NASA says that we can't go past the Van Allen radiation belts as we could in the 1970s because we've destroyed and deconstructed and wasted that technology.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
As well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. And we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belt, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back.
I don't understand. You've got Abrams tanks that you constructed in the 1910s, and you've got the most ancient form of tanks that were used in Hitler in World War I and World War II. You didn't dissipate or deconstruct, but you deconstruct something of such a sensitive nature that takes you out of this earth, and you still don't have that technology. So how did you manage to go past the Van Allen belts while going for Mars? Why? How? This is the kind of dissonance that Obama said it doesn't make any sense. Now, the other thing I'd like to talk about is the Qibla direction. Now, I want the audience to imagine that if you're on a ball, a stupid ball, and you're in Australia, Melbourne or Perth, wherever, let's say Perth, because I think that's more closer to Antarctica. So let's say you're in Perth, yes? Now, first of all, you're standing upside down. Your Qibla should be through the bottom of the ground. So where are you going to pray? Because Mecca is at an hemispherical angle. It's not even. It's at an. It's like it's not. You'll have to bury your head through the ground and then look for north, and then that's how you'd have to pray. Qibla direction alone should wake you up. But apparently this topic isn't important enough for you. And again, it's about Maslow's hierarchy. People who aren't into STEM education or STEM analysis, they don't want to take their studies further. And they're doing car business, they're selling cars on the side, they have a corner shop. They have different priorities. That's fine. But I would implore you to not criticize or belittle people or look down upon them who have taken the leisure of analyzing this topic. So, coming back to Renaissance, industrial Renaissance, I'd like to state that a lot of Renaissance progression occurred. Sorry, excuse me. A lot of the Renaissance developmental progression occurred after Da Vinci came back from his mysterious disappearance. And he disappeared for, I think, a good like a year or so, like half a year or something like that. I'll just confirm it. It's famous that he disappeared for a long while. He basically, scientist Da Vinci, now they've, when you search for it, you get the Assassin's Creed video. This is what the modern Western civilization has done. It's created a mockery of every concept, so that when you search for that concept, you get a video game, or you get a drama serial, you get a movie, you get you get a comedy sketch, or you get. So this is what's happened in the Google media, that it doesn't let you search for the right result at the right time. Um, so about like Da Vinci disappeared for many, many months, and when he came back, he invented all of these, models for airplane, helicopter, this, that, all of these, and then that's when things began to move forward, and yeah. So we cannot ignore the actual demonic character of European and Hindu scientists. Europeans didn't take the inspiration from Malakut or angels or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were aggressively satanic and spirit worshipping, religion hating, aggressively bloodthirsty, very vile, angry, aggressive, human. Because you have to remember, they were continuously at war with the Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarian and the Persian Empire. They were aggressively anti-Muslim, aggressively, and they weren't even nice about it. So, I mean, you have Dante putting Rasulullah in I think the third circle of hell. He visited hell. He was shown all circle. First of all, that's not a good sign. If you're a person and you're being given a tour of hell, it probably shows what your predestination is. And on top of that, you have the audacity to put Rasulullah in there. Oh, so you can not only is he condemned by the Almighty, I hope he's condemned, but he's also putting Rasulullah in there just to ditch the Muslims and to kick them when they're down. So now, I mean, I'm going to come back to the idea that labeling, it as a deceptive propaganda and a backward cult started by neocon biblical scholars will not cut it anymore, because NASA has been under incremental criticism from private investigators and multiple orbit videos, which have now been taken down. These videos showed spacecraft falling into the ocean, whereas on the screens, the NASA data scientists, it was shown to have left the orbit. So this is how things are. This is the dissonance. This is, but because again, I'm going to say this, because there is no look, people aren't interested in the heavens. That's a fact. People are more interested in sex, in marriage. The first thing they're interested in is in sexual desires. Second thing is economic, and sexual desire is the strongest, but it's dictated by economic power, and looks, money, and status and beauty. So whomever has the power and wealth will take beauty, incorporate beauty, beautiful people, and then they get the full halo effect. So people are more interested in marriage, flirting, wealth, looks, money, stat. No one bothers looking upstairs. These astronomers, these were very Albuni, rahmatullah alayhi, and all of these people that did mystical work. These are 1 in a million people, 1 in a billion people that ignored what was the politics and the nepotism, favoritism, and that was going on in the world around them, and they isolated themselves, secluded themselves, and they looked to the heavens above. That's what made them special. And then you had satanic priests who did the same. They led very secluded, asexual sort of lives, but they were very, very successful because they had all the fame and wealth and money, and they were able to they were on grants, patronage by the kings, and they did what they had to, the heliocentric Masons, and they worked effectively with the jinns, and they enjoyed a lot of benefits. So what I'm trying to say is, very few people look up to the heavens. Most people, they just think about it, and they never bother to look up. 90% of the people would never bother to look up, and only a fractional minority, a microscopic minority, would ever be keen to cross-investigate this topic, which is the advantage. Most people just want to see, oh, they've landed a rocket, oh, nice transmission, oh, nice, but it's so aggressively hyper-compartmentalized and so few people take interest in it that it's very, very easy for them to manipulate it. Yes, thank you. So flat Earth and the actual structural hierarchy monologue report 21. So it's a synoptic analysis. It's not just a typical documentary about flat Earth. You can find it from Eric Dubé, 200 proofs for flat Earth, level documentary, this and that, blah blah blah. You can do that. That's in your own time. But we, are trying to bring this challenging topic and bring its complementary salient features and all the factual information in one leaflet to present it as a singular, cogent, and coherent document in a readable and accessible format. So my aim, to synthesize this document is to cover the left out aspects in a synoptic fashion and to provide a holistic but comprehensive overview of the situational complications facing this research, and also to elucidate the micromechanics of the heavenly architecture and how these space companies are clouding the facts and mingling it with perniciously, nasty fiction, artistic fiction and artistic impressions of the planet. So just want to let you know that you're not in a globe. There are no frontiers. There are no planets. You're not going anywhere. There's no population occurring on another planet. There are no ventures. Nothing's happening. You're not going anywhere. That's what I'm trying to. If you could, then I'd suggest you try to break the Atlantic Treaty and go past the ice wall and see what happens. The treaty observers would never let you pass through the ice wall. Never ever. They wouldn't even let you get near it. And so my duty is to integrate the facts and provide an insight that would benefit. Sorry, the next page. It would benefit, the educators and audiences in understanding the deception at a full scale. And so I mean, look, scientific argumentation is quite dangerous because it can be very, very tricky at times. It requires the use of calculational discernment, and you have to look. The way we can link heliocentric to Mason is because all of the scientists that were working on this heliocentric model, they were sun worshippers, they were pagans, they were Masons, and they had links to Jesuits and Templars. And the Templars emptied the Solomon's tomb, and they took all from Palestine, they took all the magic scrolls of Solomon, and they took all the magical power. That's Europe isn't standing on power, based on technological. They're standing on powers of witchcraft. They're standing on solid foundations of Solomonic witchcraft. That's why they're indefeatable, indispensable. They're invincible because of the Solomonic witchcraft that they possess, and which has helped them to acquire technological advancement, because quantum computing, quantum triangulation, quantum quantum tunneling, these are all magical phenomena. And we're at a point in technological revolution where it's indistinguishable from magic. You have people's iPhones are hissing all the time. You have iPhones talking to each other. You have weird noises coming out of the phone. You have bots talking to each other, and the conversations get creepy. It's all on YouTube. So I'd like people to understand that don't get impressed by hyper celebritized scientists such as Stephen Hawking's, because his books are just glorified theoretical physics. That's pretty much it. And he had a big dispute with Leonard Susskind from Yale, and Leonard Susskind badly exposed him on the topic of black holes. Not so much the theory of it, but the jargon and the conceptual debate of it. And also, Hawkins came out to be a very, very pernicious, pathetically narcissistic, obstinate individual, extremely inflexible to accommodating arguments of his, opponent. And everything went down the hill after Tycho Brahe's death. And what I'm trying to say is, please do read Annus Mirabilis papers of Einstein in 1905, which is very, very theoretical debating jargon. It's all about theoretics. He's trying to introduce a new religion of quantum worship, quantum scientism, and that's where the Hindu pundits and the Einsteinian elite, and they come together, because Hindus celebrate alien worship, jinn worship, and all of the gods and goddesses are, glorified jinns that are enjoying positions of worship. Hanuman, Kali, and then Bhairava, Kalwa, entities like Narsimha that are used in witchcraft. And you have European Christianity is also nothing but witchcraft. They practice intense amounts of witchcraft inside the churches, which is never brought to light. So, we can't ignore the strong ties of Satanism, Masonry, Jesuits, Rosicrucians, European secret societies, Belgian, Brussels secret societies, Hinduism. And we can't ignore it. This is indispensable. And that's where Alan Watts and Krishnamurti and all these speakers of enlightenment, and they came into existence, and they further promoted the religion of quantum existence, that you are your own God. They provided a very cynical, cruel, callous, robotic version of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what Quran says in 48:6, that we have cursed the pagan men and women, and we hold enmity against them and anger against them, and we will enter them into hellfire. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely angry with them, and drawn a circle of darkness around them because they purport and distribute and spread and disseminate an evil assumption about Allah. So yeah, that's how things are. So Quran 48:6 is an extremely philosophically in-depth verse that is extremely deep. So yeah, I mean, I talked about ether experiments, Michelson and Morley, and I said to Dr. Baloch, Dr. Baloch, if globe model is correct, then witchcraft shouldn't work, because witchcraft is nothing but force, action of a force at a distance. Evil eye is nothing but action of a force at a distance. And evil eye and witchcraft prove the existence of ether and longitudinal science rather than the current quantum science we live in. And we've talked about the anatomical differences between rocket and jet, about hyperbolic, parabolic, and projectile and linear motion. I'd like to just talk about metadata, because in artificial intelligence, which we're living right now, we always have to do big data. We have big data. Once we have a lot of information, like the topic of flat Earth, we need to compartmentalize and categorize the information. And then once we categorize and compartmentalize the information, we have big data. Big data is enormous amounts of data. We have enormous amounts of varying data, like uniform homogeneous data, not varying, of varying degrees, homogeneity of varying degrees. And once we have a large amount of data on this topic, then we need to do metadata analysis. The metadata analysis is that this model of globe is designed to link you to evolution and atheism. This is what's so it's a deceptive treachery, and it's linked to a state of mind that's atheistic and nihilistic. Now, if you look at the European movement of feminism, when in 1820, I think, or 1920, in Wisconsin, the American men gave these American women the right to vote. That's where feminism started from anyway, and it became a political movement in the 1960s. And that's where the nuclear family got destroyed. And we now have hijabis and, very Islamic looking women. I don't know whom they work for, but they're claiming that Rasulullah was a feminist on TED Talks. This could not be further away from libelous defamation. These people who term Rasulullah as a feminist and as a soft-hearted, a very, very, very soft and weak individual, should be tried for libelous defamation in International Court of Justice. They should have the titles stripped and imprisoned for this amount of posthumous defamation. This is posthumous libellous slander and defamation, and you are not allowed to put titles on a person who's no longer, physically available against the consent of that particular person. So these people need to be tried for their religious crimes of defamation and slander against posthumous accusation. If we look at the family model of Britain and Europe, we have a very spider-like, arachnid, satanic, so a dirty, vicious, venomous family model. In the arachnid family model, which is spiders, the male lustily breeds with the female, produces the eggs, and once the offsprings are born, the female kills the male, and then the children kill the female, and then they disperse out, killing each other, eating each other, and then making their own nests. In the British family model, European, white, Western European family model, a man hooks up with a girl, impregnates her, has a couple of babies, then the woman kicks out the guy for any reason, and then the guy goes to some other woman or lives alone, and then the woman lives with the children, takes care of them, puts them through college and whatnot, sixth form, and then they put the mother in care home. It's extreme. I mean, if we talk about the topic of Gog Magog and VMAT2 gene, the Bill Gates presentation on VMAT2 gene and races that have the VMAT2 gene and races that are not religious, and European hordes, the 12 tribes of Europe, European hordes such as Huns, Bulgars, Vikings, Celtics, Gaelics, Caledonians, Picts, Anglo-Saxons, Franks, Normans, and Goths and Visigoths and Vikings, and these 12 tribes of Gog Magog, and then 13 tribes of Khazar people that have hijacked you. All of these 25 tribes, they've hijacked Christianity in form of Roman Catholic Church. They've destroyed all the Unitarian, actual, real Christian documents, or imposed them under lock and key. And they've produced their own versions of Bible that the Muslims are debating day in and day out without any fruitful consequences, and a lot of time is wasted. And they are the people who brought out feminism, socialism, capitalism, Marxism, nihilism, necrophiliac sex worship, ritualistic magic worship. They revivalized it. They've revivalized every corruption that was available in previous Egypt, and they revitalized it. They take all the inspiration from the satanic pharaonic civilizations, and they pretend to be Christians. They masquerade as Christians, whereas these institutions are nothing but sources of imperialistic torture and imperialistic hegemony. And the amount of Imran Hussain is absolutely correct. The per capita jinn concentration in Britain is extremely high. That's why every single person you come across is suffering from stress, distress, depression, anxiety, frustration of all sorts, and every person is angry, frustrated in one way or the other. So I'd like to just say that it's you have to realize that it's quintessential for the untrained religious elite to take interest in this topic, and also to understand the nature of the scientific argument. Scientific argument is extremely vicious. It can be flipped, and it can delineate and misguide the masses. It's extremely dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Clever people who are very shyster with their words, and they have a very what's the particular word? They're very good at deceptive argumentation, or Decepticons. They can flip the argument without the knowledge of the receiver in a way that the receiver would be brainwashed as to what they want the receiver to be brainwashed with. So I'm going to end with the fact that Operation Paperclip, Operation Fishbowl, and Operation Bluebeam are all linked, and you'll find out in due time. But right now, we possibly are at the brink of a famine. So we need to, those people who are criticizing me for bringing this topic up, that's fine. You go and collect yourself, and fulfill your hierarchies. But if you've not been able to do it for the past 3 generations in Europe, I doubt you'll be able to do it now. Those of us who want to talk about astrometry, astrophysics, astrochemistry, astrobiology, those of us who want to explore the architectural heuristics of the place we live in, and we have enough time and leisure, then please let us do it. Do not criticize us or look down upon us, because we are not stupid nerds. We are not video game nerds. We're actually investing our time in actual real research that's beneficial to our belief. And you can have any belief, but if your belief is not in line with facts, then your belief won't take you very far. So I hope this link would be sent to Dr. Baloch. This link would also be posted numerous times in his comments for the video. There are many people who were asking for my, you can send it to those people in the comments. You can also post it in the main comments. You could also post it on your Facebook. I'm extremely indebted to Habib, the leader founder of Muslim Flat Earth Society here in Humberside with us in Doncaster, to have given me the opportunity to regurgitate my research. I'm very, very thankful for his service to this cause. And thank you, Habib. Would you like to say anything, please, as a conclusion, please?
Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate your time, Brother Luqman, and it was very fruitful, and the points and the issues that were raised and the way that it was tackled, mashallah, very intriguing. And I hope in the near future as well we could have more presentations and prove to the world that inshallah that the earth is flat and that we are enclosed in over several domes.
Yeah, I
the
welcome
Quran
more
and
panel
Sunnah
members.
prove that.
Get in touch with Dr. Baloch and ask his panel to face our panel and to have a detailed, in-depth, multifaceted, multivariate discussion. Because as nice and loving and caring Dr. Baloch is, he doesn't have a clue about these topics of physics. So I'm very thankful I met you, and thank you very much. So wish you all the best, and I'll probably meet you in future, and we'll do more work. So
Definitely.
wish you all the best.
Okay, then Jazakallah khair. Take care then. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye now, man.
وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت